I had just refueled my Cessna 150. I had my friend Will in the right seat as an Eagle passenger, and I went to restart the plane after refueling, and there was a horrible grinding sound when I turned the key. So I did it again, just to make sure, and nothing changed. So I called Mike. Mike diagnosed a probable starter issue and told me to pull the prop through one blade and see if it would change anything. So I put Mike on the cell phone up on my panel. I had Will hold the brakes for me, and I hopped out of the plane, pulled the prop through, and got back into the plane. I'm like 5 foot nothing, so I always have to pull my seat all the way up to be able to reach the pedals. So I'm pulling my seat up and the seat goes thunk, and I turn to Will and I'm like, what now, this day, you know? So I got everything in place, put my lap belt on, got my shoulder harness. You know, it's a 150, it's not easy. And I hear Mike whining over the phone. So I picked up the phone and Mike's asking me, what's taking so long? Patience with your little sister, dear brother. So on that attempt, the starter grinded a little bit again, but then the plane started right up, and we decided to proceed with the flight. Will and I were flying my daily aero commute from Cameron Park Airport to Watts Woodland for work, and I know this commute like the back of my hand. So I try to get Will to take the controls. He took the controls for like 30 seconds after I cajoled him to do so, and immediately gave up as soon as ATC asked us to look out for traffic. It was pretty cute. The air was really smooth, and it was a great flight. I know this flight, though, I know that as soon as we get into Watts Woodland with the uneven heating from the farmland and everything, things get a little bumpy, kind of in the pattern, sort of approaching the pattern. My approach is east to west, and yesterday I was landing on 3-6, which brings me in on a crosswind leg, and so that's how it was yesterday. I was 950 feet above the ground, straight and level, and somewhat slow, maybe 85 miles per hour or so, so not terrible. And that's when the turbulence that I had expected began. I kept my cool just to model for Will. I mean, I'm cool anyway, but I especially kept calm so that Will would see that there was absolutely nothing to be concerned about. So I'm on crosswind for 3-6, and then it happened. Suddenly, we hit a bump of air. My seat goes flying back in the track. And what's the first thing I do? Because of instinct, I grab that yoke and yank right back with me. So I was in a immediate nose pitch high up in the air attitude, and almost as instinctively, I just let go. And I let the plane correct and fly itself. So I grabbed the top of the panel and I pulled myself back into position. I checked with Will, he was only slightly green, and then I made a normal, awesome landing. So I've often heard of situations where seats slide back in their tracks unexpectedly, and I've always just thought, like, okay, so if that happens, I can fly the plane. I don't need the rudder, right? Who needs rudder? I never thought about the part where it's your instinctive reaction to grab and yank and end up in that very dangerous nose-high position. If I had been in this situation on my climb out, instead of the configuration in which it did happen, I don't think I'd be here telling you guys the story today. So as I was taxiing to my tie down and thinking about it, I'm admonishing myself for not checking that my seat was locked into the track, which didn't really make sense to me because it's part of my absolute routine. It's my pre-flight checklist. I always check that my seat's in the track and always make my passenger wiggle to make sure that their seat's in the track. So I asked, well, like, did you see me check? And he goes, yeah, you checked more than once. So it was really kind of baffling to me. So when I got out of the plane, I found this broken spring laying on the floor. This is the spring that holds tension against the seat rail to lock it in place, to hold it in place. So when I replayed the story again in my head over the past 24 hours, and I've been thinking about this, I realized that this spring broke when I was still on the ground. This spring broke when I was at the pumps and talking to Mike on the phone, and I heard that thunk of my seat, and I turned to Will and I said, "What now?" That's what it was. This broke then, and I proceeded with the flight. I didn't even think twice about this. I put it out of my mind. So really, I have 3 takeaways from this. My first one is just, I'm astounded that something that tiny, and I'm talking about the missing piece, teeny tiny, what is that, 3 millimeters of metal, can cause like such a catastrophic failure and could have catastrophic results. My other takeaway is a reminder to not brush off the little things, especially when you're busy thinking about something else. Like I was so busy with dealing with the starter that when my seat thunked, I kind of, I disregarded it and I didn't revisit it. I didn't think to come back to it. So it's kind of a reminder to kind of try to make a mental note to come back to revisit something that seems minor. And then my third takeaway is like just train and keep training. 2 days before this, I had practiced my stalls in this exact airplane with Mike during my flight review. So I don't know, nobody knows how much of that practice and that muscle memory actually came into play when I had to deal with this situation and had to recover from a nose-high attitude. So that's the story.